Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Sudeep, and I'm here with Jaithirth Rao, retired entrepreneur and the print columnist. Our topic of discussion today is his latest article titled Defending India is Not the Dharma of Indian Origin CEOs in the US. It Could Backfire. Now, a part of your column, the title is very clear, but the part of your column deals with the debate of citizenship versus place of origin and sort of where your loyalty should lie. And you say citizenship should be placed higher on that pedestal. Can you explain why you think so in the context of Indian origin CEOs?
Yeah, I just think, let me give you an example in my own life.
Yeah.
I was working in a large multinational bank in 1998 and living in Los Angeles. I had not taken US citizenship. I was just living there as a resident. And when India exploded bombs in 1998, many of my colleagues came and talked to me. And they were quite surprised that I was quite happy that India had exploded bombs. They thought I was a kind of peacenik, non-proliferation type. Why would I do that? And it then occurred to me that at that time, if you remember, the US was imposing sanctions on India.
Yeah.
It's one thing to defend India, but if I started criticizing the US for imposing sanctions, they could very well have said, who is this guy? He comes into our country and works here. And he tells us what our foreign policy should be, favoring the country that he clearly is loyal to. So that's always stayed with me, those incidents, those conversations. And luckily, I didn't do that. I didn't make any comments on US foreign policy, whether they should impose sanctions or not. I just stuck to India has a problem. India needs deterrence. And in any case, I was not a US citizen, although many of them may not have known when we were talking. They just knew me as a senior executive in a large multinational American bank. So when this thing happened, all these 50% tariffs and all this happened, in a few of our podcasts and in a few TV channels, I picked up, sometimes from the anchors, sometimes from other people, hey, why are Indian CEOs keeping quiet? They're powerful, they're big shots. Indian origin CEOs, not Indian CEOs. They should be doing something. And again, that just kept sitting in my brain for a few weeks until suddenly, a few days ago, it came to me, connecting all of this and saying, they're not stupid, they're wise, Indian origin CEOs, by keeping quiet. On a matter of American foreign policy, vis-a-vis their country of origin, they should keep quiet. Because if they don't, or if they do, they should support the American position. They should say, yeah, America should impose sanctions, should increase tariffs, not one which is going against the official American position, because then all these ideas started coming through my head. What constitutes loyalty and in what? No, that doesn't mean that they don't have to come to India to visit their parents. That doesn't mean that they need to cut off enjoying Indian music on YouTube. No. What it does mean is that when it comes to political matters, if there is a confrontation, not a confrontation, if there's even a kind of discussion between the US, where they live, where they are citizens, which is the place where they have prospered, and their country of origin, it is best for them to keep quiet. Because if they start lobbying for their country of origin, then it becomes very curious because, hey, what are these guys doing? This is the US State Department, whatever, Trade Secretary. We have decided this is a foreign policy decision of the US. And these guys are not opposing it because they think it's a good decision or a bad decision. They're not working with the content of it. They're just opposing it because it hurts their country of origin. And
Yeah.
that, if somebody can make a case that putting 50% tariffs hurts the US, even that, I think it's better that a native born American do it rather than an Indian origin prominent person, because that's at least content. But to come across, give the impression that you're taking a side because that's where you have the tug of loyalty, very dangerous. And I've used some examples in my article about this. Once these perceptions start, it can go to very difficult situations. In 1941 December, when Pearl Harbor happened, there was a lot of suspicion of Japanese Americans, even though none of them ever said, "Oh, we support the Japanese attack" or anything like that. But there was sense of disloyalty or a perception of possible disloyalty, and they were in London camps. In our own country, pretty shamefully, in 1962, we rounded up a few thousand Chinese who lived in Calcutta and elsewhere and put them in an internment camp in Rajasthan. And it was so absurd because most of these Chinese were actually anti-communists,
Yeah.
and therefore were not supporting the Maoist Chinese government, which was militarily engaged with India. But, again, as I said, just the suspicion, possible suspicion, it all creates a penumbra of problems, which then result. And so we have to be very careful about these things, because these are complicated things when you cross borders, when you do stuff, and then when you try to, normally it doesn't matter. India and America virtually never have many great disagreements. 1998 was one, 1971 was one, and now is another. There's a little bit of a standoff. It's not even a major disagreement. It's in my opinion, a minor standoff. So normally none of these things matter. But once in a while, when these things do come up, I think it is very important that the idea of disloyalty, or even possible disloyalty, or even potential disloyalty, be completely eliminated. It should not ever even slightly come up there. That's why when Indian anchors on Indian TV and Indian YouTube podcasts and all saying, "Hey, where are our CEOs? What are they doing? Why are they not speaking up?" They're actually barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
Because if they do speak up, it'll actually backfire. That's the second part of my point, which is not only shouldn't you do it, if you do it, it will backfire.
Yeah. What's interesting is, of course, your point makes a lot of sense. Us Indians sitting in India don't know what Indian origin CEOs go through, or even regular Indian Americans per se, or where their loyalties lie. It's much easier for us to say, "Why aren't you defending your homeland?" But what if when there is legitimate critique against a foreign policy, forget foreign policy, any policy of the American government, do you think they should?
I think there's no problem. Critiquing domestic items, there is no problem. Critiquing US Japan policy or US Netherlands policy, I know anybody in the US can do it. But when you get into this, and there is this background that you're Indian origin, I think you need to be You can't pretend that doesn't exist, that it's not an issue. You
Yeah.
can't say, oh, I have the right. This is absurd, extreme free speech fellows. I have the right to do anything. Yeah, you have the right to irritate other people and then they might kill you. This is stupid. Why do you want to irritate them? Move on with some other thing. So, my point is, uh, yeah, you have a right and you should. But when it comes to this, particularly political issues,
Hmm.
mean, and as I said, in 50 years, there have been three probably standoffs.
Yeah.
So 90% of the time, we don't have a problem. The two countries are getting along quite well and everything is hunky dory. Once in a while, there might be a small problem. And your job is to stay away from it. Let native born Americans deal with it, and they will deal. In fact, what happened after 1998? How did we get to the Indo US nuclear treaty? It wasn't the influence of Indian Americans, it
Hmm.
was cold blooded, native born Americans who reassessed India, and it was cold blooded Indians who reassessed whether such a treaty was in our interests. So that's the way these things get done. They don't get done on the basis of sentiment. So one shouldn't try and intrude and bring a sentimental connection into this. It'll actually screw up matters.
Yeah. Another comparison you make in the article, especially in terms of lobbying and country of origin or country of loyalty, is about Jewish American lobbying versus Indian American lobbying. How would you compare the two, and are they comparable at all?
For many years now, if you look at the chatter
Mhm.
among Indian Americans, there has been a view, hey, we should learn from Jewish Americans and we should imitate them. You know? And many people have said this and it keeps circulating, this thought. So I kind of examined that.
Mhm.
And I said there's one major thing that differentiates Jewish Americans from Indian Americans. They share a common Western culture, what they refer to as a Judeo Christian culture. You know? And so there is a straight kind of connect, psychological connect that they have. We don't. Indian Americans are Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Parsis, Jains, Sikhs. Yeah, there's a small number of Indian Christians who do share a religious overlap with many Americans, but they're too small to be significant. So we don't have that cultural connect that Jewish people have with the Western world because they're part of the Western world, or many of them are part of the Western world. Um, so we do not fall into the same category.
Yeah.
We should remember we are just like Vietnamese Americans or Korean Americans who are quite distant culturally from the Western rubric. Uh, so that is not a good uh, example for us to follow because simply we're not like them. Let's not pretend that Indian Americans. See, one of the things is people attach every great importance to economics.
Yeah.
Indian Americans are quite wealthy. They're in
Mhm.
the highest or very high income bracket. So are Jewish Americans. Oh, therefore we are similar. No, they are Judeo-Christian Western heritage people. We are not. Let's be. We have to, just because your income levels at one point in time in history, in one particular geography are roughly the same, doesn't mean anything. It means a little bit, but doesn't mean much. Not particularly for things like lobbying. The second thing I've noticed, and that's become increasingly important, is that the so called Jewish American lobbying success, in some respects, seems to be backfiring.
Yeah.
And in our case, if we try too much lobbying, it may backfire sooner than it has
Yeah.
done for them. So that was the second point I wanted to make. Hey, watch out. This is not a good role model for
Mm.
Indian Americans to pursue.
Yeah.
We are not them. We
Yeah.
are a different people. We have different sets of views of the world in culture terms, not
Yeah.
in economic terms, not in when we discuss mathematical theories or whatever, but in cultural matters, we are not part of that. So let's not pretend we are. And two, in our case, it may backfire very soon. In their case, it's had a build up for a long time, and only recently there is some evidence that it may be backfiring.
Of course, I mean, you speak about one aspect of the shared cultural heritage of Jewish Americans and Americans and Indian Americans and Americans. Do you also think it has to do with the big R word, racism, and how we're perceived in the US, especially recently with,
Listen, we can never run away from historical
yeah.
realism. The United States of America, the 13 colonies,
Mm.
were largely inhabited by people from England. Not even that many Irish or Scottish in
Yeah.
1776. It was an English, okay, a British outpost in North America, and then it was inhabited. The non-free people, the slaves, were blacks imported from Africa. But the free people were British. Okay, and then over the years, over the last 200 years, this thing has gotten expanded
Yeah.
into white and this, that, and the other. And there is a sense that they were the people who founded the country. And you can argue, we can, oh, what about Native Americans? All that. But I'm talking about what they feel
Yeah.
or what many of them feel. And it's the way it is. It's the way it is that they gave the uh, their country its beginnings.
Mhm.
And by and large, it's an English speaking country. Some of
Yeah.
the best English writers in the world have been Americans. All their movies are in English. So it's an English uh, kind of place.
Yeah.
And Indians turning up there, we are a different group. Some of us may speak a reasonable English, but that doesn't change the fact that we are a different group. And therefore, we will be looked at as different. Now, does that constitute racism? Particularly, does it constitute racism in a negative way? I don't know. I never
Mhm.
experienced negative racism in the US. And I lived there for many years. I lived there in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, and all the three big metropolises of the US. I traveled a lot. I didn't experience. So I don't think they are racist. But I do think they are cognizant of the fact that we are different, as are we. And I think it's easier for them. Let me put it this way: if an English person or a New Zealander migrates to the
Mhm.
US, it's simply now you can argue in a normative sense it shouldn't be. That is wrong. Normative stuff. I'm talking realistic stuff. In realistic terms, there is an issue, but I've never experienced it. By and large, they're a very generous, warm hearted, open, welcoming people, um, hospitable, and certainly very meritocratic, very clear that if you're doing a good job, you should be rewarded, promoted, etc. So that's what I experienced. So I would not get into this thing, oh, Americans are racist stuff. That's not the reason. I'm saying it is more fundamental. Tomorrow, if Russian Americans or Ukrainian Americans argued against US foreign policy because they wanted to demonstrate loyalty to Russia or Ukraine, even though they're whites, I think there would be major problems. So I'm saying when it comes to politics, why do you want ordinary Indian CEOs, so prominent, successful people to get involved? We have ministers, they have ministers, we have bureaucrats, they have bureaucrats, and they will cold bloodedly argue, discuss, debate, and decide. It's not going to happen because of lobbying by a few individuals, however rich, prominent, successful they may be.
Yeah.
That's the issue here. I mean, we have tough negotiators, they have tough negotiators. And yeah, we're in a weaker position. America is stronger in trade matters, but we're not completely devoid of cards. I've mentioned that in the article. And so the negotiations will go on, will get resolved. And trust me, just like the aftermath of 1998, I don't know, took 10 years to get resolved or even longer. Yeah. When did it finally get resolved? Yeah, 10 years, 2009. It was a result of a lot of cold blooded, discussions, negotiations. There was Jaswant Singh earlier and on our side, and later Manmohan himself got involved. So it was not and it wasn't done based on lobby. It was done because sufficient number of people in the American establishment understood that sanctions of 1998 and America's negative posturing was counterproductive, and they had to make a move. And we understood that trying this extraordinary thing that we will do everything on our own and not have a treaty with the world's most important scientific, technological power is not in our interests. So it came, but it was not because of lobbying, is the point I'm trying to make. And it cannot be because neither negotiating party is going to get influenced by that. It's going to be cold blooded national interest that will decide that.
Yeah. And in terms of national interest, something that towards the tail end of your article, you speak about is dual citizenship.
Interesting subject. For many years, I actually was pretty active, right? The Indian government and say, hey, let's give dual citizenship to Indians living abroad who have taken citizenship of those countries.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I'm glad they didn't listen to me because Indian government is that way. We always criticize it for many things, and we should, for bad roads or whatever, but we can't criticize them for some of these ideas. They come up with very good ones. They haven't given dual citizenship. You cannot be an American and an Indian, a British person and an Indian, a Singaporean and an Indian. No. What they have said is, you are an overseas citizen. You are a citizen of some other country.
Yeah.
We'll give you an OCI card, which means some of the restrictions that we have imposed on other foreigners, like every foreigner has to get a visa to come to it. For your lifetime, you don't need a visa. You don't have to go every year, every 6 months to the Indian consulate and apply, or go on the website and apply. You can come. So visa benefit. Then other restrictions, you can buy and sell property freely in India. Things like that. We have not given them the right to vote, for instance. In countries like Romania, Romanian citizens living outside Romania are one of the biggest voting blocs. And they have changed that citizenship. They have become British or American, but they still vote in Romania. We don't allow that. And that's very sensible.
Yeah.
You have to vote in your elections wherever you live. If you're a citizen of that country, you cannot try to influence our parliamentary leaders. That is to protect us. Because if rich, Indian origin people there start kind of getting into this, we're powerful people, we are in trouble. Secondly, we also realize that on certain matters, like joining armed forces and so on, you can't. You can't get senior jobs in the Indian government or Indian military or something, or even in Indian political establishment if you're not an Indian citizen fully. None of the dual citizenship business. I think very smart on India's part, because that prevents anybody accusing anyone. And again, I'm telling you, these things are not after they happen. It's not because those Chinese guys in Calcutta were disloyal to India that we interned them. It was a perception. So before the perception gets created, we have to we have to take action. So I think OCI is a brilliant scheme in retrospect, and I'm glad that's the way it is, and that's the way it should remain. You primarily pay your taxes, and you primarily vote and show your loyalty to the country whose citizenship you have acquired and taken, and where presumably you've gone because there have been opportunities to improve your life personally and professionally, and you've succeeded. You've had a measure of success, all good things. So stay loyal there. That doesn't mean you can't celebrate festivals, you can't encourage tourism, get your children to go and come back, do do scholarships for Indian students to go to America, any philanthropic stuff. You can do a million things. But when it comes to politics, and particularly if there is a time when there are differences or discussions or debates between the two countries, you have to be extra careful that even the faintest hint of a suspicion of disloyalty or dual loyalty doesn't arise. That's the point I'm making.
Perfect. I think that's a great note to end the video on. Thank you again, Jerry, for coming so graciously on video with us and writing these articles.
Thank you so much.